All right, well, welcome. This is Hugh Culver, and this is a webinar called Make Time for Health. I offer webinars throughout the year as a way to connect with the people that are following me, the people that I've run into, the people that have come to my events. And it's just my way of sharing some of the research that we are doing here at our company and also with our clients. And it's also a way for me to just to reach out and to try and help people that can't come to the events that we put on, or I'm not getting a chance to be in front of them as a keynote speaker. So I like to keep these really punctual. They're going to be 45 minutes long. And we're going to do something a little different at this webinar, which we're just experimenting with. So stick to the end, and I'm going to tell you all about how we're handling that. But I know you're going to get a lot of value out of this, and I know this is also a really popular topic, health. And I thought, given that it is June and it's already warm, I mean, where I live in Kelowna, it was 30 degrees day before yesterday. So 30 degrees is, you know, that's pretty hot. I don't know what that is in the States, but I think it's like 400 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that. I'm just kidding. And so it's a perfect time of year to be thinking about health. So I'm going to share with you what I think is the challenge with health. I'm going to share with you some solutions for health from my perspective. But you need to understand, and I'll just give you a heads up right now, there is nothing new under the sun in terms of health. In fact, I don't think you need to buy another book about health or diet or weight loss or muscle gain or whatever it is you're interested in doing, unless you have a particular interest in a particular skill set. I think you just need to start using what you probably already know. So I want you to consider this to be more of a reminder and maybe just kind of a restructuring of some common sense. But regardless, I want it to be as valuable as possible. So let's jump right in to this webinar. So the way that the webinar works is I'm going to talk for a little while, then I'll ask you some questions. We're going to be using the Q&A button in the top left-hand corner quite a lot throughout it because it gives me feedback in terms of where I am at with it. And I also just want to let you know that we just completed a survey, and thanks to any of you that did help me with this survey. We have almost 500 people that responded to a very simple 3-question survey that we sent out. And so a lot of what I'm going to be talking about in this webinar is coming from the result of that survey, which essentially asks people what gets in the way of you creating the results you want in your day, what gets in the way of you creating your ideal life. Those are the first 2 questions, the most important questions. All right. So let's jump in. Make time for health. So first of all, I think it's pretty obvious, and I think you would agree, we have a problem. And one of the funny things, I was talking to a fellow about this morning, who you're going to meet actually in this webinar, but one of the funny things about our health, whether you're thinking in terms of our weight, our flexibility, our aerobic capacity, our ability to get a good night's sleep, whatever it is you want to consider in terms of health, our mindfulness, our spiritual practice, is that we have a very poor feedback mechanism. In other words, we don't exactly, it's not like a car where suddenly our carburetor starts to cough or smoke comes out of the tailpipe or the tires get low and you can't actually turn the wheel anymore. We as humans manage to kind of get on, you know, we keep on moving, right? Maybe we're a little slower. Maybe we're puffing a little harder when we go up the stairs. Maybe we don't feel so good after that big dessert that we had 3 nights in a row. Like whatever it is, but our feedback mechanism, it's not like a big red light comes on the dashboard. And so what we need to do is we need to be much more aware now before we run into trouble. Let's look at some of the statistics. First of all, in recent, and these statistics I'm sharing with you are all done in the last 12 months. We have in Canada, we are, by the way, we are the 5th heaviest nation in the OECD. And that is crazy for our country that prides itself on being so healthy. 24% of us are rated as being in the obesity scale, which means that we have a body mass index of over 25. Only 20%, now this is actually an American study, but this is an American study of almost 500,000 adults, only 20% get the required minimum amount of exercise, which in the States is about 2.5 hours a week of moderate exercise. And so by moderate exercise, they're talking about walking briskly. And they're saying it could either be like 2.5 hours of moderate exercise or about half that time, let's say a little over an hour, of more vigorous exercise, like, for example, going up hills, cycling, swimming, those sorts of exercise. So over an entire week to only need to get 1 hour, and they're saying that 80% of people don't even get that. That's really scary. People are spending, on average, and a lot of people spend a lot more than this, the high in Canada is 3.2 hours a day on social media. So we're talking YouTube, Facebook, whatever you want to call it, and on average it comes down to 2 hours a day. So this is eating away at our day. People are spending also a lot more time on work. We have this kind of crazy thing going on where, you know, companies are doing more with less. A lot of people are moving towards entrepreneurship, which is great, but what it comes with is a cost. And they're saying now that 2/3 of Canadians are working over 45 hours a week, and that's double what it was about 20 years ago. That puts time pressure on people. What it also does is it results in a real work-life balance issue, and a whole third of Canadians say that they're struggling with work-life balance. People are watching about 30 hours a week of television, which is insane. I don't know how you can even manage to do that. And I think for a lot of people, it's just simply on in the background. So we have this growing challenge with our health where we have got really bad practices. And here's the scary part, is it's actually getting worse. People are sitting more than ever before. People are resorting to fast food more than ever before. And it's not only a problem in terms of sort of being epidemic across the world, but it actually gets worse in lower economic regions. And so it's actually directly correlated. In other words, the lower the income, the worse off people are because they start resorting to less healthy food, which is actually cheaper. So my story is that, for those of you that know me, is that I've always been kind of a guy interested in a lot of adventure and doing extreme sports. I probably competed in about 20 triathlons. I know I've done over 10 marathons, 4 Ironman competitions. I've gone out and done 16-hour runs, without stopping. I've 2 years ago won the Yukon River Quest, which is a 2.5-day river race. And on it goes, climb mountains. And the reason I'm telling you that is that doesn't work for me anymore. Like it used to work. What used to work for me was I put this huge event on my calendar, and I still love to do that, and I'd work like crazy to get ready for it. But I'm in my 50s, and I realized that I can't just have that kind of feast and famine type attitude. And then what happened in our family was this. We got a puppy dog. And for those of you that have dogs, you're probably going, aw, right now, but you also know that that's the size that dogs come in. This is our dog now, and his name's Riley. And Riley requires a lot of exercise. And Riley has helped me to discover something really, really interesting about how I can make time for health. So, and I'm sure I could write a book about greatest lessons come from dogs, etc., but this is what Riley has taught me. What he's taught me is that there's 4 things that help me to make time for health. One is, it's got to be enjoyable. In other words, I have to anticipate having a good time. Going to the gym day after day, or, heck, even a yoga practice, which I love, I couldn't do it every day. Neither could I go swimming every day or paddling every day. I need to be anticipating and looking forward to it. And one of the tricks I use, for example, because Riley needs to be walked twice a day, he could easily have an hour a day of vigorous exercise. One of the tricks I have is I always look forward to listening to a recording, either an audiobook or a podcast. I'm either listening to Jian Ghomeshi on CBC, or I'm listening to one of my favorite podcasters. So that's how I make it enjoyable. Number 2, consistency always beats out, extreme one-offs. And so whereas the competitions were great in the past, I'm actually healthier now at the age of 56, I think, because I exercise every day for an hour. And it's always full of variety. It's always different, but it's consistent. I never miss it. And I never miss it even when I'm on the road. Third is it has to be convenient. What I've discovered is that if it's awkward or requires a lot of equipment or even requires getting a lot of people together to organize it, it won't happen. So it has to be convenient and easy. So for example, when I'm on the road, what I've learned is that as much as I would love to go to the gym, I really don't have time for that because my time is taken up with travel, trying to get some sleep, and mostly preparing for my keynote the next day. I am being highly rewarded to do a great job for 60 minutes in front of an audience. And I can't take an hour to go to the gym, so I've invented a 15-minute hotel room workout, which is completely anaerobic. I feel fantastic afterwards, and it's incredibly convenient. And the 4th thing that Riley has taught me is that I need to be rewarded. I need to have an incentive for doing it because there's always something coming up. There's always something else going on. Right now in our life we have both our daughters are home. One has just finished provincial exams. Now she's off with 2 jobs. The other one's back from university. She's got 3 jobs. And then, we've got, my wife has moved to a new clinic because we're renovating our house. So there's like 4 guys at the house when I left today. There's like jackhammers, there's framers. But so I need to have an incentive to get out the door and get going because otherwise there's too many distractions. And so one of the tricks I use is, and Jerry Seinfeld actually uses the same trick, and that is that I record on my calendar after every workout. And so as simple as it seems, and as trivial as it might seem to you, it really gives me an incentive because my goal is to have the number 30 or more at the end of every month. 30 means 30 hours of exercise. And I don't care if it involves walking Riley, going for a hard paddle like I did at 8 o'clock last night on the lake, or running with the guys on Saturday morning or whatever. I need to have that reward. Jerry Seinfeld puts a big X on his calendar every day that he works on his material. And his quote is, he says, my job is to not break the links of the chain. In other words, he's got years and years of these X's which make up like a chain pattern on his calendar. He says, my job is not to break the links of the chain. So I've learned these 4 things about what helps me to make time for exercise. Now I want to break it down for you. So let's talk about this. How are you doing making time for your health? Let's assume we look at the last 7 days, and let's assume that there's at least 4 things that we could measure. How well you sleep, how well you take care of yourself in terms of food and nutrition. That means eating the appropriate amount, not overeating, eating a well-balanced meal, and you all know the good stuff that we should be having in there. Lots of color on our plate, not too much sugar, low fat. We want to have like a kind of a meal that you could live on forever, and lots of liquids. What are you doing in terms of daily exercise, and what are you doing in terms of taking care of your mind, in terms of peacefulness, spiritual practice, meditation, whatever it is that helps you to relax your mind. Now I want you, if you've got a piece of paper in front of you, to write those 4 words down on the left-hand side: sleep, diet, exercise, and mind. You can do that right now. And then beside that, I want you to make a scale from 0 to 5. And let's assume that 5 represents consistently good. Because remember, those are the 4 things that I'm working on, is consistency. One of the 4 things is consistency. So let's assume that 5 represents consistently good. So now I want you to give yourself a score. How are you doing on those 4 measures? How are you doing in terms of sleep over the last 7 days? In other words, going to bed early enough so you can get enough hours. How are you doing in terms of diet? In terms of not overeating, having small snacks, making good conscious choices, and drinking lots of liquids? How are you doing in terms of daily exercise? And how are you doing in terms of mindfulness, spiritual practice, peacefulness, whether that's going to yoga practice or meditating in the morning or going to church, whatever it is that you need. And the reason why I'm asking you to do this quick exercise, and by the way, if you're listening to this as recording, I would really encourage you to pull over or do this as soon as you get home, because it is so important. All change begins with awareness. Whether you look at the work of Dr. Martin Seligman, the past president of the American Psychology Society, or any of these experts, it all starts with awareness. That's the first thing. Is no one is going to listen to advice unless they're aware of their need. You're not going to go see a financial planner unless you know you're in trouble. And so the idea here is, before I give you a bunch of advice on what works for me and for my clients, what I want you to understand is that you have an area of improvement. We all do, of course, right? So even though this is a bit of a setup, because I don't know anybody that might give themselves a 5 out of 5, I think it's really important for us to start here. All right, so now let's look at, so what is it that gets in our way? Well, one of the things that gets in our way of making time for health is this, what I call the procrastination cycle. And it looks something like this. First of all, we have an idea. You might get off this webinar and say, this is fantastic. I'm going to drink water every morning. I'm going to go buy a dog. Just kidding. Don't do that. I'm going to go and, take up yoga again. I'm going to spend some time at night reading my book before I go to bed. Whatever it is, all of those things are wonderful. So then you get yourself ready. You go get the gym membership. You call the yoga center to see what it's going to cost or what their hours are. You go find a good book. And then you launch. And this is the exciting part. We all love the launch because now we've got, the new outfit, the new time schedule, the new commitment. and then you take your first steps. And this is exactly what you need to do, is get going, right? So whatever it is you need to do to change your diet, you get going. So maybe it's as simple as, okay, after 10 o'clock in the morning, I won't drink any more coffee. And then eventually, you're going to get stuck, because there's going to be this one day, and you think to yourself, I just need one more cup of coffee. Then there's going to be this one day where you're going to say, I know I booked the yoga, but something came up and now I can't go. And then what happens is you get frustrated, and usually what you do is you blame everything else, of course, around you. You blame, the client that called at the last minute, your kids that needed you. You blame, how busy your life is. You blame whatever, and then you start to repeat that pattern. And this procrastination cycle is going to really get in the way of you accomplishing anything. So one of the first things you need to understand is that you're not perfect. You're going to have stuff come up. But what has to happen whenever this cycle starts to rear its ugly head is you have to have a strategy. You have to have a way to get over this. So I want you right now in the Q&A box, I want you to type in, what is it that gets in the way of you making time for health? So you can just type in 1 or 2 words, whatever it is. What gets in the way? What is it that makes you procrastinate? What gets in the way? Is it just you're too busy? Is it the kids? Is it money? Is it time? Go ahead, type that in now. Like, what gets in the way of you making time for health? All right, so I see life and work. I see family and work. I don't make myself a top priority. I love that one. That's a great one to deal with right now. Work, tiredness, busyness, and feeling sick, sleeping in too late, time, bad weather, too busy, motivation, being overwhelmed, adult, kids, oh that's too funny, family and kids, working long hours, chronic injuries flaring up. Okay, so here's the deal. You're going to love this. Okay, here's the deal. I want to give you a solution. I love this. Thank you. Oh, yeah. This is good. One person, Gunnar, just said, me, in capital letters. Okay, so Gunnar, this is for you. Here are 3 things that are going to really help you to move forward to make time for health. You got to do this. You have to think differently. You have to plan differently, and you have to act differently. You see, I think a lot of us have these really misconstrued notions around what it takes. I don't know, somehow we think that we got to go to the gym 5 days a week, that we have to have like a Stairmaster or a rowing machine in the basement. We have to go on vacation to finally get healthy. And of course, all of that is completely unrealistic, because even though it might be nice once in a while, it fails my test. You remember? So my test is it has to be enjoyable, consistent, convenient, and rewarded. Well, sure, I get a Stairmaster and I get excited for a month. It's going to get boring pretty fast. So I need to look at what can I do differently. Well, it starts with how we think. So I want you to start thinking long term. This is the first thing. All of the things that you folks typed in right here. Bad weather means I won't go out walking. Kids, me, tired at the end of the day, chronic injuries, being overwhelmed at work, motivation, bad weather, family, on and on it goes. My question to you is, if we were to have this conversation 30 days from now, would you still be typing those same things in? Because if you are, you got a problem. Because what you're doing is you're blaming everything around you. And you're going to have to find a way, if you think this is important enough, if you scored yourself less than a 5 or a 4 on that last scale, you've got to find a way to make this happen. And here's the cool thing, because you see, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you don't make time for health, you feel worse. And when you feel worse, you got more reasons to not make time for health, because now you don't have enough energy. But what I've discovered is, even when I have a really busy week, if I stick to my goals and I get that 1.0, 1 hour every day on my calendar, I have more energy for everything else. I'm better for my kids. I'm more resilient. I can be more loving to my wife. I can be nicer to people, and I can get more work done. So let's get started. First of all, we've got to think long term. All right. So what does that mean? Well, we got to understand, as Dr. Harry Lodge, the author of Younger Next Year, which by the way is a great book to read, he says normal aging isn't normal. I love that. Normal aging isn't normal. We've got to understand this, that for the last 350 million years, our body has changed, but not dramatically. And so where we think we're sophisticated humans because we know how to use the internet and use, an Interact ATM machine, we're really not that sophisticated as far as how we're built. And our body is built to actually exercise. Our body is built to move. That's how it's designed. And when we don't do that, it gets worse and worse and worse. And so let me give you an example of someone that takes this advice to heart. This is my mom, Eleanor. I've never actually shown a picture of Eleanor before in any of my programs, but I am so proud of her, I had to include her here. Mom is 96. And as someone who's 96, she kicks butt. And that's her dog, Penny. I don't actually like Penny. I like Mom a lot more than Penny. And Mom walks an hour a day. And here's some of the things that Mom does thinking long term. First of all, she takes care of herself. She takes care of her weight. She moves all day long. She gets a full night's sleep plus a nap. She has a great diet. She still makes most of her own food. She lives with my youngest sister in a house. She gets aerobic exercise, so she goes up hills. She does flexibility exercise. She goes to yoga. She works on her muscles. She works on her mind. She's constantly reading and exploring and experimenting and trying new things. Like the other day, she sent me a voicemail message and told me she was volunteering at the local school serving lunches. So the whole idea is that Mom's thinking long term. Mom comes from a family of 15 kids, and I can guarantee you she's going to be, there's only 2 left, and I'll bet she'll be one of the last ones because, well, she's already one of the last ones, but I mean, her whole attitude is all about long term, and she is going to just keep as active as she can because it doesn't matter that she's 96, she acts like she's 76. So my point is, don't think in terms of, okay, well, I got a big problem now, I got all these reasons why I can't do this stuff, and so once I get that finished, I'll then be able to take better care of myself. That is ludicrous. That is a recipe for disaster. What you have to do is today is start investing, just like a bank account, into your health. So here's the first thing I think you need to do, and that is you need to understand how healthy habits are created. So quick little review. Healthy habits are created with 3 parts. There's the reaction, the thing you need to do. Like, for example, you feel thirsty or hungry or you're bored or you just arrived home or you just arrived at work, and you go into a routine. Now, sometimes that routine is a good one. I reach for a glass of water, I feel better. I stand up and I take a break by moving around. I park my car 4 blocks away and I walk. So that's a good routine. But there's also bad routines where I park myself in front of YouTube or Netflix for the next 2 hours. And then I get a reward. Even when you do things that look like procrastination, there's always a reward. So for example, if you go and watch too much TV, you're getting a reward because now you're able to, quote, take it easy. So now what has to happen is you need to break this cycle because this cycle is going to work only if you have good habits. So how do you break it? First of all, you need to invent a new routine. So if I'm feeling bored, I go and step outside and go for a walk around the block. Or in my case, I go and walk down the lake or get on my unicycle or go for a paddle or whatever, grab Riley. Or I go outside and read a book. And then I need to invent a reward. How am I going to reward myself? Because that's part of my formula. I know I need to have an incentive. And then you start to practice this new routine. Now there's a lot more to it. You need to understand how the rewards work. But the basic idea is to understand that everything you do, and Duke University says that at least 40% of what you do every day is actually based on habits. Everything that you do around habits has those 3 parts. And if you can unlock those parts, so let's go back to what some people said. Oh, the weather is bad. So a number of you said the weather's bad, therefore I don't go and take care of myself. Okay, great. So right now you've got a routine which says I look out the window or I check my phone, the weather's bad, and then my reward is I don't get wet, cold, miserable, whatever it is. But you don't like that. That's why you told me that that gets in your way. So you don't like that response. That routine doesn't work. You need to understand right now you're getting a reward for it. The trick is you need to now give a bigger reward to going out anyways. See, so when I look outside and I say, wow, it's really miserable, first of all, I ask myself, well, what else could I do? Could I do something indoors, or could I do something that, I'm not going to get completely drenched? But then I ask myself, what's the reward? Well, the reward is I get to put 1.0 on my calendar. That's the reward. Or maybe I'm going to relax and I'm going to go and then get to read a novel or something like that. So you need to understand how this formula works because this will unlock at least 40% of your activities around health. Okay, so let's go back to my list. What are the 4 things that I said are my goals? Enjoyable, consistent, convenient, and rewarded. Well, let's look at some really basic examples that I could do that might turn into healthy habits. I could drink more water every morning. I could walk at least part way to work. I could stand for all of my phone calls. I could walk after lunch. I could avoid desserts during the week. I could eat healthy snacks or bring healthy snacks to work. I could walk uphill some days of the week rather than always just walking on the flats. I could read a book before I go to bed. Any one of these things, even though they're small as an instance, these are exactly the kind of things that keep you healthy. See, I want to live to be like my mom. Like, I want to be 96 and kicking butt. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to continually look at my habits. And so if you're complaining that something is getting in the way of you having healthy habits, you just need to examine what's the reward you're getting by procrastinating, because there has to be a reward. Figure out the new routine and then reward the new routine. All right, so I'm going to give you now 5 awesome strategies, and I'm going to ask you then to vote on these strategies. You're going to love these. So 5 ways that you can now move into action. Because remember, the formula is think differently. So I want you to think long term. Think like my mom. Plan. You need to plan so that it's enjoyable, consistent, convenient, rewarded. And then third is you need to act differently. So I'm going to give you 5 ways to act, and I think you're going to love these. Here we go. Number 1, you simply need to move more often. We are the sitting generation. Recent reports as early as April of 2013 had some very scary facts. And they said essentially, we sit more than any population generation in history, and that if you sit more than 4 hours a day, you are doubling your risk of coronary disease, type 2 diabetes, and obesity, doubling your risk. And the reason is obvious. It's because there's enzymes in our body. There's one called lipoprotein lipase, and this lipoprotein lipase is designed to circulate within our bloodstream and attack fat molecules. And it cannot do that when it's dormant. When you are sitting, you have only 20% of your actual blood flow circulation. So you're only getting 20% of the effect. When you exercise, you get up to about 80% of your blood flow circulation. So the trick is, and these reports were very clear about this because these were major longitudinal studies that were done. The report says that essentially what we need to do is stand up more often. So for example, when you're on the phone, during meetings, between tasks, move your trash and recycling can away from your desk is the trick that I started using about 3 years ago. It's amazing. This is so simple. But I'm constantly standing up and moving. I did it about 3 times before I got on this call. When you're on flight, stand up about every 20 minutes and stretch. Watching a movie, you can stretch while you're watching the movie and get up every few minutes. Or even on long drives. Like I now when I leave Kelowna, if I have to drive to Vancouver, I get down about halfway to Merritt, I get in my car, I run around the car, stretch a few times, get back in the car, and what happens is when I get to Vancouver, I feel fantastic, like I feel more refreshed, I feel like my body actually wants to move, my back still works. So number 1 is to move more often. So your goal in this webinar is to decide which one of these 5 things could I take on, and this is by far the easiest. Okay, number 2, join the morning club. I've done a webinar on the morning club before. You can also learn about the morning club. We're going to include actually a free ebook that I just wrote on joining the morning club, but I also wrote a blog on April the 4th all about this on my website, hughculver.com. But we're going to send you a really cool ebook about this. Joining the morning club. What's the morning club all about? The morning club is one of these amazing habits that I have been using for years, where I get up before the rest of the world gets up and I do the stuff that I could not get done any other time of the day. So for me, my routine is 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. is creative writing. So that's when I was finishing this webinar this morning. And yesterday morning I was working on a blog post, and the day before. So every morning from 5 till 7. Then I exercise for 45 minutes in the morning, and then another exercise usually in the afternoon. So here's some of the things you could do in the morning club. Meditation, exercise, writing, reading, enjoying music or creating music, planning. So here's how the morning club basically works. What you need to look at is, what is it that I can't get done during the day that always frustrates me? I'd love to have more time for fill in the blank. And then to look at, when do I go to sleep and when do I wake up? Most people that I share this information with admit they go to sleep far too late. So they're wasting precious sleep time, just kind of, wasting time in the evening watching TV reruns or half asleep while they're trying to read a book. you're much better off to go to bed early, get up early, and then enjoy the morning club. So the trick is to build this into a routine. It should not be optional. The only option for me in the morning club is when I actually go on the road, and I just change that routine based on how much time I have. Okay, so the morning club is number 2. The third one is called Hari Hachi Bu. And Hari Hachi Bu, I learned about from a guy named Dan Buettner in his book, The Blue Zones. And Dan Buettner was this fellow that went around the world looking for the oldest populations, living populations. And I believe he traveled with a group of scientists, and he was funded by the National Geographic Society. And basically what they were trying to unravel was, why is it that certain generations live older than others? And one of the populations, I should say, and one of the populations they studied was in Okinawa, Japan. And in Okinawa, they have this expression, Hara Hachi Bu. And what Hara Hachi Bu means is, essentially, you stop before you're full. So one of the great healthy habits you can take on, and by the way, this is a really powerful one because if you talk to any exercise physiologist, what they'll tell you is that the amount of calories it takes to burn off, let's say, an extra serving of potatoes or an extra serving of meat, essentially you'd have to run like another marathon just to try and burn it off. So even though you may be exercising regularly, food is the first thing you want to take care of because it's very difficult to burn off those extra calories through exercise. So how does Hara Hachi Bu work? First of all, you start by taking a smaller serving. One way of doing that is to actually have a smaller plate. Research has found that people are much healthier when they simply have smaller plates in their home. It's ridiculous. But a smaller plate means I will probably have a smaller serving. When I'm in a buffet line, I usually take a dessert plate and serve myself on a dessert plate rather than the full plate. Chew more often than you think you need to. Some people say 30, some people say 20. I say at least 10 times. When you chew more slowly, your food starts to digest and you start to have a full feeling. When you eat quickly, it's kind of like you override that full feeling mechanism, which has always got a delay on it. Some people say it takes as long as 20 minutes for your mind to register that you're full. So when you eat more slowly, the mind has a chance to kind of catch up. The other trick is to wait 5 minutes before you decide what to have next. So for example, if I go to a buffet table, which I have to do whenever I'm on the road and traveling at conferences, so I get my little serving of food, and then usually I fill the plate as much as I can with salad, and then I'll add in a little bit of protein, a little bit of carbohydrates. And then I wait before I decide what I want to do next, because my temptation is to go get another serving, either because I've got some nervous energy, or it's already been a really long morning for me, or I'm worried about getting hungry when I'm on stage. But if I just wait 5 minutes, what I find is that feeling goes away. Another trick is to think twice before you order the dessert, or think twice before you go for that second serving. And usually what happens now is you'll give your mind a chance to catch up. Again, there's a big delay. And by the way, if you drink soda pop, which is bad enough in itself because of the sugar content in soda pop, what happens is it also deadens that whole vagus nerve cycle, which is the one that tells the mind that you're full. So it's kind of a sinister truism about fast food, is that if you eat food, for example, that usually comes with soda pop, you're actually making it's like a double whammy. Not only are you eating food which has got an extremely high fat content, you're also deadening the response cycle, so your mind doesn't even know that you're getting full. And all you need to do is go and watch Super Size Me by Morgan Spurlock, and you'll get exactly you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. And finally, one of my tricks is to order tea and not dessert. So all I need after a meal is to be satisfied. I need something else after that meal, but tea is a perfect replacement for me for dessert. So tea is a really nice thing to be sipping on. It gives me something to do. I've got a plate in front of me, but I also 20 minutes later will feel a lot better having a cup of tea as opposed to a cup of dessert, or a bowl of dessert. Okay, so before we go any further, let's see which one of these three you are excited about taking on. So let's go over them again. Number 1, move more often, so that would be a 1. Number 2, join the morning club, that would be a 2. Number 3, Hari Hachi Bu, that would be a 3. So go ahead in the Q&A. I want you to punch in 1, 2, or 3, or all 3 of them. Which one are you excited about taking on, like literally right now in June? 1, 2, or 3. So again, number 1 is move more often. Number 2, join the morning club. Number 3 is Hara Hachibu. Okay, so I've got I got a 2, I've got a 1, a 3, a 2, 2, 1, 2. Oh, awesome! Lots of 2s and 1s. Oh, even some 3s in it. That's great. All of them. I love that. That's fantastic. Okay, great. This is exciting. So here's the trick is I need you to keep it really simple. You're going to have a lot more success if you keep this to a simple routine. So just pick one thing that you're going to change. So for example, if you want to go and join the morning club, I want you to do this for me. Decide before you go to bed what you'll do in the morning. Because if you have a temptation to go on your email or to go onto Facebook, it's not going to work for you. The idea with the morning club is to do something you can't do any other time of the day. So that's why I do all my creative writing in the morning. But before I go to bed, I always write down what my project is. And sometimes I'll even scratch out a quick mind map, or I'll do a few notes like I did last night, because I want to wake up ready to go. So I really encourage you to figure that out. So figure out what's the one thing I'm going to do, and then practice one way of doing that. So if it's the morning club, do it that. If it's move more often, just move your garbage can, your recycling can. That's the one thing you got to do, and just do that for a couple of weeks. Don't try and take it all on. Okay, let's go to number 4. This is great. You're on board. I love it. Okay, let's go to number 4. Number 4 is what I call DBV thinking. All right, so how do I make time for health? Well, I've got to adopt what I call day before vacation thinking, because you know what it's like. The day before you're going on a trip, day before vacation, things change. You get really excited. You're looking forward to it. I wrote about this actually in a blog that's entitled More Play Makes You More Productive, and that's published on the 8th of June, just this month. And you can find that at hughculver.com. More Play Makes You More Productive. It's actually one of the more popular blogs that I've written. And so it's what I'm talking about in that blog is this idea of day before vacation thinking. And here's how it works for me. Is before I go to exercise, I ask myself, okay, what could I be excited about this time? Because remember, part of my formula is it's got to be enjoyable. There has to be anticipation. So I'm going to ask myself, okay, what is it I could be excited about? So for example, this morning I was looking forward to hearing Michael Hyatt's 100th episode of his podcast, because he talked about how he was going to change things around. So as I left the house, I plugged in and listened to Michael Hyatt's 100th podcast. It was really fun. So that's simple. But it also could be a new route. It could be a different podcast. For example, Jian Ghomeshi was the recording of him speaking to Richard Simmons recently about his new book on meditation. Someone mentioned it to me, so I plugged in that podcast, and I look forward to listening to that interview. It was fantastic. Or a new audiobook. Or I'm experimenting with new recipes. My daughter, my youngest daughter, is given me a couple of recipe books. Basically, she's given them to me out of desperation because my cooking was so horrible. And I've really enjoyed it. So she gave me a Jamie Oliver book, and then she gave me a Canadian, the Michael Smith book. And I've got 3 now, and they're fantastic. And they're great for guys because they have big pictures. And what I love about that is I get excited. So it's day before vacation thinking. I'm going to go home, and I'm going to explore with this new recipe. And so it gets me excited about doing things that are good for our health. I'm going to try some new exercise, some new stretches. I'm working on some things now for my hamstring, and it's just fun to explore these things. Or I take on a personal challenge. Like I might say to myself, well, can I go to yoga 3 times this week? So can I work around all my appointments and make it 3 times a week? It's a personal challenge. The idea is day before vacation thinking, this anticipation, the dopamine starts flowing when we're looking forward to what we're going to enjoy. Dr. Neil Fiore, F-I-O-R-E, Dr. Neil Fiore, in his book, The Procrastination Habit, he talks about this as, he calls it his unscheduled strategy. And the idea is you plan the play before the work. What is it that's going to be fun? What is it I'm going to enjoy after the work? So you're going to go for a workout. So what is it you're going to reward yourself? What are you going to go into? Okay, I'm going to go, this time I'm going to go and, I'm going to go and try a new exercise. I'm going to come home and use a new recipe, or like what's going to be different. I think one of the ways that people fall off the wagon is because they get bored with the routine. So just try and find ways to break it up. Okay, that's DBV thinking, number 4. Number 5 is to simply drink more water. So if there's one thing I need all of you to do is to drink more water. I mean, this is such a no-brainer, but it is something that is going to help you with everything. I mean, your body is something, 60 or 70 or 80% water. I don't know, you can correct me on that, but it's basically we're a big tank of water. And so here's what I suggest you do in terms of drinking water. Number 1 is you need to understand that you have opportunities all day long. And so, for example, as soon as I wake up, I have a big glass of water before I enjoy anything else. And the reason is because I live in a very hot, dry, arid area, and it's a desert basically, and my body is being dehydrated while I sleep. I have a glass of water before meals, which by the way is a really great ninja trick, which is going to make me feel full before I sit down for a plate of food. So I always have a glass of water, especially when I'm on the road and I know that I might overindulge in terms of the buffet plate. I have a glass of water. I don't drink coffee myself, but I was out with some colleagues yesterday, and I thought it was really great that the gal that we were with said she went and got her cup of coffee, and then right away went over and poured a glass of water, and she says, I always hydrate when I have coffee. And I thought that's so great because coffee is actually a diuretic, so is tea. And the diuretics actually draw the water out of our bloodstream. They don't put it in. So water is the obvious solution. I can have a glass of water between tasks. I can have a goal for how much water. So for example, when I come to work, I always bring a full liter of water. So I've had water in the morning, I drink water on the drive to work, and then I have a full liter before I go home. And here's the thing is that, you see, I might forget during the day, but when I see that liter bottle and it still has water in it, then I chuck it back and I drink it all before I go home, because my goal is to have that thing empty at the end. And Becky said, as we speak as well, super important. I find it's incredible how dehydrated I get when I'm speaking. All right, so there you go. So we have number one is to move more often. Number two is to, what was number two? Join the morning club. And number three was Hari Hachi Boo. Number four is to day before vacation thinking. And number five was to drink more water. So super simple. These are easy things that everybody can do. And I want to tell you a story. And this is kind of cool because it actually happened this morning. But before I do that, I want to tell you something that I'm really excited about that you might want to enjoy as well. And it's something we call the time freedom formula. So if you like what I'm talking about and you feel inspired to actually go and make a difference with your health, and if you're thinking long term, I mean, I really encourage you, today's the day. Whatever it is I've talked about in the last 40 minutes that got your attention, today's the day to start it. Don't wait for some big miracle to happen with the kids suddenly moving out, or you change your job, or suddenly have less work. So I've created a program called Time Freedom Formula. It's an online training course. It's amazing. It's, I think, quite frankly, the best thing I've ever built. It's an online training program, and you watch 7 videos. That's it. 7 videos. They're all about 15 minutes long, and it teaches you exactly how to do what I've been explaining today. There's 7 video lessons. It comes with a 20-page workbook. It comes with MP3 recordings, so you can listen to it while you're traveling. And there's even a really cool graduate forum in there, so people that are on the program are constantly commenting, asking questions. I'm in there, I'm responding, and so we're having this ongoing dialogue. Here's what some of the folks have said about it. Lowry, actually, I think Lowry's on the call. He said, lots of great tools that have already impacted the way I'm working. Claudine said, it finally organized my office. And John said, now I'm using the flight plan and the day plan, and I'm getting the right things done. So now let me tell you a story about why, and this is why I think Time Freedom Formula is so important. This is Gordon, and this is a picture from this morning. So today, June the 25th, and I've been meeting Gordon this is down at the lake where I walk with my dog Riley every morning, and I've been seeing Gordon down there for about the last month. I've never met him before, and being the kind of curious person I am, or maybe I'm nosy, I asked him his story, and here's Gordon's story. Gordon decided to take care of his health. He was getting ready for retirement, and at the age of 50, he stopped smoking. At the age of 55, he stopped drinking alcohol. And then he went to work on his weight, and he's now recently lost 80 pounds. And Gordon is 72. Gordon is 72 years old, and he looks fantastic. And I said, Gordon, I'm doing a webinar today called Make Time for Health, and I want to take your picture because I just think you are awesome story. You know, you're an awesome person. And he said, oh, for sure, right? And so my point is that Gordon started in his 50s to take care of his health. And he just did one thing. He stopped smoking. And then he did one more thing. He stopped drinking. Then he did one more thing. He took care of his weight. And I just think that is exactly what we all need to be doing, is not waiting, but starting right now. So Time Freedom Formula is the kind of program that teaches you how to do that. Now, normally it sells for $197. We always try to give people a bit of a discount when they're online. So it's going to be, for today only, $147, but it's only available today at $147. And we'll also give you a full license, which means that if you're with an organization, anybody in the organization can enjoy it. That's a full license. You can actually share the login information. That's a pretty rare opportunity. So if you have a team of 20 people or 40 people, you only have to pay once. And I'll also we'll send you in the mail an autographed copy of my book, Give Me a Break. So all you need to do is to go to hughculver.com/health. Now here's the thing, is also on that page will be a copy of my new ebook, Join the Morning Club. It's really fun. It's also, I've included in the book my 15-minute hotel room workout, which is really cool. You might like that. So we're going to give you a copy of the new ebook, Join the Morning Club. Also, you're going to get all the slides from the show. So Sarah's been busy working in the background, and she's put these slides together into a PDF, so that's going to be on the page. And also, I'm going to encourage you to also make sure that you go and you leave some comments on that page. All right, so that's an offer that's available for you right now. So here's a quick little summary of what we've covered. Covered a lot of information. Thinking is all about committing and getting it done now and thinking long term, like my mom. My plan is to do things that are enjoyable, consistent, convenient, and rewarded. And there's the 5 that I share with you. Those will all be in the show notes. Just go to hughculver.com. Quick little thought for you is last year, as some of you might know, I learned how to ride the unicycle. Quite frankly, I still don't ride it very well, but it's pretty fun. I can go around the block quite easily, and I ride it pretty well every day. And one thing I learned from a video that I was using, a training video, when I was learning how to ride the unicycle, because I was so frustrated trying to learn how to ride, is this. And this fellow on the video said, always make a different mistake. And I absolutely love that, and that's what I want to finish you with. See, I don't think Gordon had it all figured out at first. And I certainly don't have it all figured out. But I keep experimenting. And every time I experiment and make a different mistake, I learn something new that I can hang on to. So it's not a perfect science. I don't think you need more books. You just need to look at what you already know, maybe what I shared with you today in this short webinar, and just take something and experiment. And if it's a mistake, well, then you learn from it. But I believe the worst thing that we can do as humans, as people, is to do nothing at all. So we hope you really enjoyed this webinar. Please take advantage of this offer. It's only available today. hughculver.com/health. Love to give you that discount, send you an autographed book, and I really want to thank you for being on this call. I know it's only a 45-minute call, but I hope you got tons of great advice from it that's going to really serve you. And just as a final thing, if you could just throw something up in the Q&A that tells me what you got from it or what you're planning on doing, I'd love that as a closing thought. So just go to the Q&A and say, what are you planning on doing next? What are you going to do next? I'd love that, and then I will let you go and look forward to seeing you at hughculver.com/health, where you can get all those goodies that we laid out for you. And until we talk next time, be your best, see the best in others, and hey, make it happen. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being on the call. Have a great day.